Hello and welcome to Business Daily. Live from Seoul, I'm Han Da-eun, filling in for Lee Ji-yoon this week. Before we begin, let's get a quick glimpse of today's highlights. New fall collections are already on sale at Korea's major department stores. Good news for shopping enthusiasts, but a desperate move for the country's retailers. And in the global headlines this week, the European Central Bank lowers the region's growth forecast as a slowdown in emerging markets continues to weigh on global growth. These stories and more coming right up. Recent China woes are weighing down on the Korean government's outlook for growth next year. Attending a G20 meeting in Turkey, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan told the Wall Street Journal that factoring in China's slowdown, Seoul has revised its growth outlook for 2016 to 3.3%, down from its previous forecast of 3.5%. But it kept this year's projection unchanged at 3.1%, saying Seoul can achieve growth in the 3% range if the country succeeds in reviving the economy through structural reforms. Choi also said he expects a soft landing for Beijing and that Seoul will adapt to the changes with new tactics like exporting more in the service sector and making use of the bilateral free trade deal. A handful of emerging markets have experienced unprecedented drops in their stock markets and currency following China's worse-than-expected economic slowdown and devaluation of its currency. September will no doubt be another crucial month with the U.S. Federal Reserve set to decide on its rate hike. So how prepared is Korea to deal with the future challenges? Our Song Ji-sun reports.
$4 billion US. That's the amount of assets foreign investors pulled from Korean stock markets last month after a surprise devaluation of the Chinese yuan magnified the country's economic slowdown. Other emerging markets also saw losses, with India and Taiwan shedding some $3 and $2 billion off their market caps. But authorities say Seoul's losses weren't as critical.
Considering our market size, foreigners' cash outflow was not as severe as it was in other Asian countries.
The Korean economy is more resilient as it does not depend heavily on commodities or raw materials like other emerging countries. Its financial health has also improved, with its short-term debt remaining in the 30% range of total foreign borrowings, down from 50% range in 2008. Seoul's foreign reserves, ranking 6th in the world, backed by its streak of current account surplus, is another safety net for its economy. But with 1/5 of Korea's exports outbound to China, Beijing's slowing demand remains as a strong downside risk.
Korea's currency and its fluctuation is rated as stable, but the China factor could further slow growth in Seoul's real economy.
As for the Fed's possible rate hike later this year, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said Friday that it is unlikely Korea will see massive cash outflow as investors now realize Korea is safer than other markets. Song Ji-sun, Business Daily.
Nearly half of Korea's top businesses face a grim sales outlook this year as the global economy loses steam. Market analysts say only 56% of the nation's 300 largest firms by market capitalization are expected to see their sales grow this year compared to last year. This is the lowest ratio since 2002. Last year, 71% of businesses saw their sales tick up, closely matching a 69% forecast. The ratio of companies with swelling sales has been on a steady decline since 2011, and analysts say it'll become increasingly difficult to see firms expand due to the country's tepid economic growth. Financial Services Commission Chairman Im Jong-yong said he will lower the entry barriers for foreign banks seeking to tap into the local market and grant more autonomy on administrative procedures. Korea's top financial regulator added he will work to improve the current system by enhancing the compatibility of Korea's regulations with international norms so that global financial companies can gain easier access to the market. Foreign banks will in the future be allowed to open branches in Korea even without opening a local office. Independent businesses are mushrooming in Korea, and along with that growth comes a steep rise in loans. Report from the Financial Supervisory Service indicates outstanding bank loans to self-employed individuals hit $187 billion as of June, a 12% bump on year. Banks granted around $43 billion worth of first-time loans in the first half of this year, climbing 34% compared to the same period last year. Over 60% of borrowers were above the age of 50, as more of the country's baby boomers are starting their own businesses after retirement, while 30% were in their 40s. In terms of how these businesses do, a 10-year review from the National Tax Service indicates that 5 out of 6 self-employed businesses fail. As the Korean economy gradually picks up from the MERS blowout that clubbered domestic spending, department stores are trying to latch onto momentum in recovery. They're rolling out early sales events on fall goods and ratcheting down prices. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
The summer heat is still lingering in the country, but the air of autumn is evident in the country's department stores. Consumers are busy checking out new fall collections as they try to take advantage of the unprecedented early start of steep discounts.
I've come to shop for new clothes since the season is changing, so I was pleasantly surprised with the early sale on fall goods.
Typically, discounts on fall items don't come around until the end of the season, so in Korea, that would mostly be around Chuseok or Korea's Thanksgiving holiday. But this year, department stores have already rolled out a nationwide sale on fall products about a month earlier than usual, trying to gain more momentum in recovery from the MERS outbreak that took a heavy toll on retailers around the country.
Consumers usually seek out new autumn products towards the end of August. We've organized this event to boost consumption.
One of Korea's biggest department stores, Lotte, cut back as much as 30% on prices for more than 300 brands during its week-long sale at the end of August. Other retailers like Hyundai Department Store also slashed as much as 30% on new fall items, as well as hosting a clearance sale on past spring and summer products. By pulling ahead major sales events, department stores are looking to offload inventory and draw in more consumers who are more than happy to grab a bargain. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
And now let's get a check on how the markets fared here in Seoul today. Seoul's main bourse Kospi dropped to the 1,880 mark, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq plunged by more than 4% as investors exercised caution ahead of a key U.S. jobs report. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi was down 1.54%, finishing the day at 1886.04, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq dropped 4.1% to end at 650.45. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency weakened against the greenback, ending at 1,193.41. We're nearing the weekend, and here to tell us what was up in global business news this week, we're joined by our Eunice Kim. Hello, Eunice.
Hi, Dan.
So I hear Japan has retracted its Olympic logo for the 2020 Summer Games on allegations of plagiarism.
That's right, and this was an unexpected and rare move. Let's go ahead and pull up the icon, the logo at the center of the controversy. The design was described as revolving around a T for Tokyo, with a rising sun inspired by the Japanese flag. But a Danish designer filed a lawsuit against the IOC, saying the logo was copied from his made public 2 years ago. Now, on Tuesday, Japanese officials said they were dropping the logo because it had lost public support, not because of the plagiarism charges. Major Olympic sponsors had already adopted the logo in expensive advertising campaigns. Not only that, back in July, organizers scrapped a design of its main stadium when costs ballooned to double the estimate to $2 billion. Japan's Olympic minister said construction was now a year behind schedule, and the stadium may not be able to meet the IOC's deadline of January 2020. European nations are grappling with the largest influx of refugees seen since the end of World War II, as thousands flee devastation in the Middle East and North Africa. Leading the bloc to deal with their relocation, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said she estimates her country will shoulder at least 800,000 refugees this year. That's 4 times more than last year. The German lawmaker told Russia's Sputnik he expects the cost to support them could exceed $9 billion, or roughly $11,000 per person. More than 4 million people have fled civil war and IS violence from Syria alone. Nearly 1.8 million of them have sought refuge in Turkey to the north, according to the UN. And just as emerging economies in Asia have been faltering, Australia's economy now is also showing signs of a slowdown. Government data released on Wednesday showed the resource-rich country posted an on-quarter GDP growth of 0.2%. That is the weakest quarterly performance seen in 4 years and comes as Australia's largest trade partner, China, has been mired in market turmoil. Growth is being blocked by a fall in mining investment, a major industry, as commodity prices and demand have also been dropping. The data triggered speculation a further cut of its key interest rate, already at a record low of 2%, could come later in the year.
It appears the volatility has spread all the way to Australia. Meanwhile, back in Europe, the ECB President Mario Draghi held a press conference last night after the Governing Council meeting.
That's right.
They've adjusted down the region's growth forecast for the year to 1.4%, is it?
You're right, and they are seeing what the International Monetary Fund said it was seeing earlier in the week, that economic growth overall was weak in the first half of the year, whether you're an emerging or developed economy. So, what's ahead? Take a look.
The ECB stands willing and able to expand its quantitative easing program, perhaps beyond its September 2016 run. And while there would be no policy changes for now, Europe's central bank showed a vigilant posture, cutting its Eurozone growth forecast for the year to 1.4% and its inflation projection to practically flat at just 0.1%, still a world away from its 2% target. ECB President Mario Draghi.
Overall, we expect the economic recovery to continue, albeit at somewhat weaker pace than earlier expected, reflecting in particular the slowdown in emerging market economies, which is weighing on global growth and foreign demand for euro area exports.
He further warned the Governing Council was bracing for a possible negative growth in the coming months and is monitoring to see whether it's a short-term effect from falling oil prices or a sign of something greater. One key point he echoed from an earlier IMF announcement: downside risks are growing. And for emerging economies hard hit by the latest triad of lower commodity prices, the rising US dollar, and slowing growth in China, they're not likely to bounce back soon.
What has been demonstrated in the last few weeks is also how much Asia is at the core of global economy and how much disruptions occurring in one market in Asia can actually spill over to the rest of the world.
Ahead of a G20 meeting this weekend, Managing Director Christine Lagarde warned of yet another downgrade of the IMF's global growth forecast in October from the current 3.5%. The IMF is pressing central banks like the ECB and the U.S. Federal Reserve to hold off on raising rates for now, citing across-the-board slow growth seen in the first half of the year and the prospect of things getting worse should investors pull money out of emerging economies.
So it looks like the European Central Bank has heeded that call. It left its interest rate unchanged after this week's Governing Council meeting. So I guess the million-dollar question now is whether the U.S. Fed will follow suit as well.
Absolutely, and we won't know for sure for at least a couple weeks. That's when the next Fed policy meeting will take place. But for now, the number of economists saying that much watched for interest rate hike will not come in this next session is growing. This also as global manufacturing PMIs that came out this week all show downward arrows for regional players. China's factory activity had another contraction in August, marking the lowest reading in more than 6 years, while growth in the U.S. manufacturing sector also slowed to its weakest in nearly 2 years.
Not good news for Korea's exporters. A lot could happen in the coming weeks, but I guess the next key indicator people are waiting for is the U.S. jobs report.
You're right, and that is due out later tonight, Korea time. Now, if America added a significant number of jobs, say above the 200,000 job level, and wages show growth, which they have not, the Fed could have a stronger case for that September liftoff. And although they'll have to take into account global factors, at the end of the day, the U.S. Fed is going to make a decision for what it feels is best for the U.S. economy as opposed to the global economy as a whole.
But a decision that many here in Korea are also anticipating. All right, thank you, Eunice, for that report.
You bet.
And that brings us to the end of the show. From all of us here at Arirang, thank you for watching.